New Orleans in 1800 does not stand still. It leans against the Mississippi and hopes the river agrees to remain where it is. The water is wide, brown, and patient. It moves with authority. The city watches it constantly. Streets slope subtly toward it. Conversations begin with it. The levee is not decoration. It is defense. Every building near the edge feels temporary, even when built of brick. Flatboats drift down from distant settlements carrying timber, flour, hides, and exhaustion. Ships arrive without ceremony. The river gives, but it also rearranges. Banks collapse. Flooding is not surprise. It is memory repeating itself. The city does not command the river. It negotiates. And every negotiation is temporary. People live as if the water is listening. Sometimes it is. Time in New Orleans in 1800 is not measured only by bells. It is measured by arrivals. A ship visible at the bend changes the day's mood. Dock workers gather before orders are spoken. Merchants adjust expectations mid-morning. The river controls urgency. If wind stalls a vessel, business stalls with it. If currents are strong, tempers rise. A delayed cargo is not inconvenience. It is risk. Sugar sweats inside barrels. Flour absorbs damp air. Letters remain unopened. The city listens for the sound of ropes thrown to shore. That sound means movement. That sound means opportunity. The Mississippi does not follow the calendar. It ignores the clock. It creates its own schedule. And the city adapts because it has no alternative. Even prayer is timed around tides. The streets of New Orleans in 1800 feel unfinished. Many are narrow. Many are soft beneath the boot. Rain does not disappear quickly here. It lingers. Mud clings. Carts struggle. The river sits at the end of perspective, visible or implied, always close. Wooden walkways rise above the worst of it, but not everywhere. Refuse collects where drainage fails. Animals move freely between structures. Barrels stack near doors, waiting for transport that may not arrive on time. The city does not feel carved from stone. It feels negotiated from wet ground. Brick rises in some quarters, but timber remains common. Foundations are practical, not permanent. The street does not promise stability. It offers passage, carefully. One misstep can ruin a day. Heat arrives early in New Orleans in 1800. Even in spring, air hangs heavily by mid-morning. Clothing clings. Linen darkens with sweat. Work slows not by choice, but by necessity. The sun presses downward without apology. Shade becomes currency. Balconies cast protection onto the street below. Courtyards trap air that refuses to move. Water barrels warm quickly. Food spoils without warning. The body learns restraint. Movements become measured. Arguments shorten. Energy must be rationed. By noon, exhaustion feels earned. By afternoon, it feels unavoidable. Night does not always cool the air. It simply softens the light. The heat is not dramatic. It is constant. And constancy governs behavior more effectively than force. People learn to rest without admitting they are resting. Survival requires pacing. A port city announces itself by scent before sight. New Orleans in 1800 smells of river water, tar, damp rope, sugar, tobacco, fish, sweat, and rot. None of it is hidden. Barrels leak. Cargo shifts. Spices mix with decay. The levee is crowded with goods waiting to move inland. Some will travel upriver. Some will remain. Some will spoil before a decision is made. The air is thick with commerce and consequence. Every shipment carries profit and risk in equal measure. The smell does not offend everyone. To some, it signals opportunity. To others, it signals danger. Either way, it cannot be ignored. The city breathes through trade, and what it breathes, it keeps. Even clean clothes absorb the port. Even prayer does. New Orleans is a city that lives by arrival and departure. That makes everyone slightly temporary. Dock workers sleep close to the levee because work begins without warning. Merchants sleep poorly because profit can rot in heat. Newcomers arrive speaking different languages and expecting different rules. Some adapt, some resist. At that time, identity is not just family. It is paperwork, reputation, and who will vouch for you. A man can be respected on one street and distrusted on the next. The port produces constant motion, but motion does not mean freedom. It means exposure. People are watched, counted, remembered. A mistake becomes public quickly. So does a debt. The city does not forgive easily because it cannot afford to. Too many people depend on trust that is never complete. Work in the port is loud, physical, and unequal. Men haul crates until shoulders swell and hands split. Animals strain in mud and heat, then collapse without ceremony. The wealthy do not lift. They supervise. They write. They wait in shade. Laborers move in the sun, and the sun does not negotiate. Payment is irregular. Sometimes late, sometimes reduced by excuses. Many accept goods instead of coin. Rum. Saltfish. A sack of rice. This keeps bodies alive but keeps futures small. In that era, hunger rarely arrives dramatically. It accumulates quietly. It sharpens tempers. It makes arguments start over nothing. A dropped barrel. A broken rope. A missing crate. The port is full of accidents, but not all accidents are innocent. Everyone knows that. Disease is not a rumor here. It is a season. People do not speak of mosquitoes with scientific certainty, but they notice patterns. Summer brings fever. Summer brings flight. Those with means leave first, retreating upriver or inland. Those without remain, watching shutters close on richer houses. This absence is remembered. It becomes resentment. It becomes proof. When illness spreads, explanations turn upward. Bad air. Divine warning. Unseen corruption. Practical measures exist, but they are uneven. A cleaner water source costs more. A doctor costs more. Even burial becomes a negotiation when bodies rise faster than rituals can contain them. The city tries to continue. It always does. Markets reopen. Ships unload. Bread is sold. But fear stays. It settles into the corners of daily behavior like dust. Authority in New Orleans does not always announce itself. It often watches. The city is layered. Some people walk with confidence because the street belongs to them. Others keep eyes low because attention is dangerous. Reputation is currency. A name can open doors or close them before a hand touches the latch. Churches record attendance. Employers remember lateness. Neighbors track who returns home at night and who does not. Gossip travels faster than boats. It moves through kitchens and courtyards, through taverns and markets. Formal law exists, but correction often happens socially. A man can be ruined without a courtroom. Credit denied. Work withheld. Invitation stopped. Isolation is punishment. Few survive it. At that time, community is not always comfort. It is surveillance. It is discipline. It is the city's quiet way of keeping itself stable. The most dangerous thing about a port city is not violence. It is uncertainty. A storm can halt trade overnight. A fire can erase a street in an hour. A frozen river far away can raise prices here without warning. Families plan, but plans are fragile. Marriage becomes strategy. Apprenticeship becomes insurance. Faith becomes structure. People cling to routine because routine is the only reliable defense against chance. Even celebration carries tension. Music is heard, but so is exhaustion. The city is alive, but it is never relaxed. It holds its breath in every season. Those who succeed learn to adapt without looking afraid. Those who fail disappear quietly. The port does not mourn them long. Another ship arrives. Another rumor spreads. Another debt is written. Life continues because stopping is not an option. The system works. Barely. New Orleans carries layered authority beneath its surface. French customs linger beneath Spanish administrative discipline. American traders arrive demanding clearer rules and faster decisions. At that time, sovereignty feels negotiable and fragile. Paper changes hands, yet habits resist replacement. Courts record proceedings in languages not universally understood. Some whisper, "Whose law governs this street today?" That question is never answered directly or completely. Officials insist stability remains intact despite shifting control. Merchants privately doubt those assurances and prepare alternatives. Flags change slowly, but power moves quietly beneath them. Identity becomes strategy rather than inherited certainty. The city adjusts, but never entirely trusts adjustment. Law is written carefully, but spoken differently. Clerks record contracts in formal, deliberate language. Dock workers negotiate terms using entirely different vocabulary. Misunderstanding becomes opportunity for those who listen closely. Some claim ignorance when agreements turn unfavorable later. Others insist the paper clearly states our terms. But literacy remains uneven across crowded port districts. Translation carries power few openly acknowledge. A misplaced word can redirect an entire shipment. A delayed signature can halt days of trade. Authority depends on interpretation more than intention. Trust erodes quietly when meaning feels manipulated. The city learns to distrust clarity itself. Class in New Orleans is visible before speech. Fabric quality signals status faster than introductions. Balconies overlook streets where laborers rarely linger. Shade belongs to those who own structures. Sunlight punishes those who do not. A merchant pauses above while dockhands strain below. No announcement explains this arrangement openly. Everyone understands the arrangement regardless. Wealth resides upstairs behind shutters and courtyards. Poverty moves constantly through exposed passageways. Respectability depends on controlled movement and posture. One misstep invites speculation and quiet reassessment. The street remembers who walks confidently and who hesitates. Free people of color occupy uncertain ground here. They own property, yet remain watched carefully. Their success unsettles established hierarchies without announcement. Some neighbors greet them politely but guardedly. Others whisper. They rise too quickly for comfort. Opportunity exists, but never without conditions attached. Paper protection does not guarantee practical security. A dispute can redraw boundaries without warning. Markets accept coin without asking ancestry openly. Courts sometimes ask ancestry before recognizing claims. Respect must be demonstrated repeatedly, never assumed. Position can strengthen slowly, yet vanish abruptly. Stability remains conditional for many in this city. Slavery underpins daily life more than acknowledged publicly. Dock schedules depend on bodies that cannot refuse. Domestic interiors function through unseen coerced labor. Plantations upriver feed wealth flowing toward markets. Chains rarely appear in conversation among elites. Yet absence of chains does not imply freedom. At that time, obedience is enforced systematically. Punishment occurs away from polite company's view. Profit depends on distance from visible suffering. Some defend the system as necessary structure. Others question it quietly, rarely publicly. Resistance exists, though rarely survives documentation. The port thrives upon labor unevenly distributed. Auctions occur without theatrical announcement, yet deliberately. Prospective buyers inspect posture, teeth, endurance carefully. Value is assessed with clinical detachment. Families are separated without dramatic spectacle. Witnesses record prices, not emotions. A mother once whispered, "Remember my name." The words carried further than expected afterward. Transaction concludes. Paperwork seals irreversible separation. Crowds disperse quickly to ordinary errands. The street resumes its routine indifferently. But memory does not disperse so easily. Stories circulate through kitchens and alleys. The city profits, yet absorbs quiet fracture. Dock labor runs on exhaustion disguised as routine. Men lift crates until shoulders swell and fingers split. Animals strain in mud, then collapse without ceremony. Foremen shout silently through gestures and harsh posture. Payment arrives late, sometimes reduced without explanation. Workers accept rum, rice, or cloth instead of coin. This keeps them alive while keeping them dependent. Accidents happen, yet some accidents feel strangely convenient. A crate disappears and blame settles on the weakest. Nobody calls police for missing cargo. They call stronger men and quieter threats. The wharf teaches lessons faster than any school. Survival depends on speed, obedience, and silence. Many learn quickly because hunger never waits patiently. Wealth enters New Orleans by water, not inheritance alone. A ship's arrival can elevate a man overnight. A delayed cargo can destroy him just as quickly. Merchants monitor the river like gamblers watching cards. They count barrels, then count rumors beside them. Trust operates, but never without suspicion following close behind. At that time, insurance is mostly reputation and memory. A man known to settle accounts receives better terms. A man known to delay payments receives closed doors. Paper exists, yet paper does not prevent betrayal. Goods rot faster than disputes can be resolved. Heat accelerates decay and accelerates impatience. The river brings fortune, but also brings exposure. Every profit is temporary until safely stored elsewhere. Class speaks through clothing before anyone introduces themselves. Linen clean or stained tells stories immediately. Buttons polished or missing become public evidence. A wealthy coat moves slowly, confident in its protection. A laborer's shirt moves quickly, avoiding unnecessary attention. Even shoes announce status through leather quality and repair. Women's cloth reveals household stability without speaking openly. Children inherit these signals before they understand language. In that era, poverty is not hidden well. It leaks through sleeves, hems, and empty baskets. Respectability becomes performance repeated daily without rest. A man can be honest and still appear suspicious. Appearances matter because credit depends on them. The city reads fabric like scripture and judges accordingly. Mistakes are remembered longer than explanations are tolerated. Authority in the port often carries paper and seals. Officials inspect manifests with slow, deliberate confidence. They delay release until fees and favors align. Merchants smile while calculating private anger. Dock workers wait, unpaid, as paperwork decides their day. The law appears stable, yet enforcement remains uneven. Some ships receive fast approval, others wait without reasons. Whispers begin immediately. Who paid and who refused? Nobody answers directly, yet everyone keeps guessing. At that time, bureaucracy becomes a weapon without visible violence. A stamp can halt food, medicine, and wages. Delay creates crowds, and crowds invite theft. Theft invites punishment, and punishment invites resentment. The city pretends order, but order is negotiated constantly. Even officials fear what happens when negotiation fails. Markets in New Orleans never truly close completely. Fish arrives before sunrise, still smelling of river. Vegetables wilt quickly in heat and damp air. Vendors shout silently through gestures and practiced expressions. Buyers squeeze fruit, then hesitate, then purchase reluctantly. Spoilage makes every bargain feel temporary and urgent. A basket purchased today may rot tomorrow afternoon. Poor families buy smaller portions, more frequently, always anxious. The wealthy buy more, then discard without guilt. This difference is noticed by everyone nearby. Children learn early to watch food like treasure. Theft occurs, but often looks like survival. Guards exist, yet guards cannot watch every hand. The market becomes the city's pulse in its anxiety. It feeds bodies while revealing hierarchy in plain sight. Rice arrives in sacks that sweat in humid air. Dock workers drag them across planks slick with river mist. Do you notice how nobody sets them down gently? They cannot afford tenderness with this weight. Merchants watch from shade, pretending not to watch closely. Every sack is profit until water touches it. A torn seam means hunger somewhere else later. At that time, rice is not cuisine but insurance. It feeds bodies and keeps labor moving tomorrow. The port smells sweet, then sour, then unbearable quickly. Buyers argue over dampness without admitting fear. The river decides quality before any man speaks. Even the strongest hands cannot reverse spoilage. This is the city's arithmetic: weight, heat, time. And time is never generous here. Sugar is wealth that can rot before reaching a table. Barrels arrive sealed, yet the heat works inward slowly. You might think sugar means comfort and abundance. Look again. It means labor, surveillance, and strict control. Plantations upriver push sweetness downstream by force. The city profits while pretending the source is distant. Dockhands unload carefully because breakage invites punishment. Merchants taste granules with suspicious restraint. They do not smile. They calculate. At that time, empire is not a flag overhead. It is a shipment schedule and a ledger line. Delay turns sweetness into loss. Loss turns patience into violence. A port city teaches this lesson repeatedly. Goods do not arrive as gifts. They arrive as burdens that must be managed immediately. Food spoils faster here than promises can be kept. Fish stiffens, then softens, then becomes dangerous. Vegetables wilt within hours, even in shaded stalls. Do you see why markets never relax? They cannot. Every delay becomes waste, and waste becomes anger. Buyers press fingers into fruit like judges testing evidence. Sellers watch their baskets shrink and their hopes shrink. At that era, refrigeration does not exist as rescue. Ice is luxury, not a system. Poor families buy smaller amounts more often. Wealthy kitchens buy more, then discard without guilt. That difference is visible and quietly resented. Children learn to watch food like treasure. Theft happens, yet often looks like survival. Shade becomes a resource traded without admitting it is traded. Balconies cast cool rectangles onto the street below. Notice who occupies those rectangles and who cannot. Women pause there with baskets, pretending it is coincidence. Men linger there, pretending they are not exhausted. At that time, even rest must be disguised. Water barrels sit nearby, already warm and stale. A drink does not refresh, it only delays collapse. Courtyards hold air that refuses to move. Mosquitoes gather where sweat gathers. The body becomes a battleground against the climate. People ration energy like coin. They speak less, move slower, and endure more. Heat does not announce itself as violence. It becomes pressure. And pressure shapes every decision, even small ones. Work follows the sun, but never truly respects it. Labor begins early, before heat becomes unbearable. By midday, movement slows, yet demands remain. Do you notice how faces change after noon? Eyes narrow, tempers shorten, patience becomes expensive. Employers still expect output regardless of climate. Workers still need wages regardless of fatigue. At that time, the city survives by pretending bodies are machines. They are not. Accidents rise when hands tremble from exhaustion. A dropped crate can break more than wood. It can break a week's income. People learn to hide weakness quickly. Weakness invites replacement. Replacement invites hunger. The port runs on endurance, not fairness. And endurance has limits, even when nobody admits them aloud. Rest exists here, but it is never celebrated openly. Some call it tradition, others call it common sense. The city slows during the hottest hours each day. Do you notice how shutters close like eyelids at noon? Streets thin, and voices soften behind walls. Workers stretch out on floors where air barely moves. Merchants retreat into courtyards and count losses quietly. Even animals seek shade, ribs rising with each breath. At that time, exhaustion is not weakness, but reality, yet nobody wants to admit they are governed by heat. Pride resists the obvious. So people pretend the slowdown is voluntary. They pretend it is civilized rhythm. The truth is simpler and harsher. Bodies cannot perform endlessly in this climate. The city pauses because collapse would cost more. Then the afternoon returns, and work resumes without apology. Spoilage forces constant calculation, even among the poor. A basket of fish is a countdown, not a purchase. A sack of flour absorbs damp air like a sponge. Do you understand why anxiety feels permanent here? It is not personality, it is logistics. Families plan meals like military operations. They cook quickly, store poorly, and hope desperately. A delayed fire means a ruined pot. A broken lid means insects by morning. At that time, waste is not moral failure, it is economic disaster. Children learn not to complain about taste. They learn to eat before food turns. Markets close, and kitchens become laboratories of survival. People smell everything twice. They touch everything cautiously. They listen for sickness in a cough. The city teaches suspicion as a domestic skill. Even dinner carries risk. Quietly, every single day. Barrels and crates form walls along the levee. They look orderly from a distance. Step closer. They leak, sweat, and shift constantly. Dock workers push them into place with bruised shoulders. Merchants argue over markings like priests reading scripture. Do you notice how nobody trusts the labels fully? They have learned better. A wrong crate can ruin a contract. A missing barrel can ruin a household. Storage costs money, and delay costs more. Rats find gaps where humans cannot. Thieves find crowds where guards cannot. At that time, congestion invites disappearance. Goods vanish without dramatic struggle. The loss is discovered later, too late for blame. Suspicion spreads outward like smoke. Everyone watches everyone else more closely. The port depends on movement, yet movement creates chaos. Sometimes the port consumes what it cannot ship. Spoiled goods are dumped quietly, away from markets. Do you know what that does to a city's mood? It breeds resentment. People smell waste while children go hungry. A merchant discards a barrel while a laborer counts crumbs. No one says this aloud in polite spaces, but the memory remains. At that era, inequality is not theoretical. It is visible in what gets thrown away. The river receives refuse as easily as cargo. The city pretends disposal is practical necessity. It is. It is also humiliation. Waste becomes proof that the system is unfair. Anger builds slowly, then finds targets unpredictably. A vendor is accused. A dockhand is blamed. A stranger is beaten. Summer arrives like a threat nobody can arrest. People begin preparing months before the air turns heavy. Do you notice how certain families quietly disappear each year? They flee upriver, seeking safer air. Those left behind watch and remember. At that time, departure is privilege disguised as prudence. Fever does not strike evenly, but fear does. Rumors multiply, which street is cursed, which well is poisoned. Doctors offer explanations that sound confident and fragile. Ministers offer prayers that sound strong and uncertain. The poor cannot leave, so they adjust instead. They avoid crowds. They cover mouths with cloth. They close windows despite heat. Every precaution feels insufficient. Every cough becomes suspicious. The city continues working because stopping means starvation. They stop trusting the air itself. Mosquitoes gather where water refuses to drain completely. They rise at dusk like silent smoke. Do you notice how conversations shorten as evening approaches? People slap at necks and wrists impatiently. They light small fires to chase insects away. Smoke hangs low, mixing with river humidity. At that time, nobody names the mosquito responsible. They speak instead of bad air and corruption. Windows remain open despite fear and discomfort. Air must move, even when danger might move with it. Children scratch until skin breaks. Mothers tie cloth around cradles at night. Sleep becomes negotiation rather than surrender. Fever begins quietly, without spectacle or warning. A warm forehead becomes cause for calculation. Should a doctor be called or not? Delay might save money. Delay might cost a life. The city learns to wait and watch, nervously. Yellow fever does not announce its arrival dramatically. It enters households without permission or ceremony. Do you understand why summer feels like gambling? A healthy man works one morning confidently. By evening, he cannot stand steadily. Neighbors gather, then retreat uncertainly. Doctors arrive carrying instruments and uncertain confidence. They prescribe bleeding, purging, and strict isolation. Some recover, and hope returns briefly. Others decline despite every intervention attempted. At that time, explanations feel incomplete and fragile. Bad air is blamed because something must be blamed. Families burn bedding, scrub floors, and pray. Wealthy districts empty slowly but deliberately. Poor districts remain crowded and exposed. Fear travels faster than medical knowledge. Rumor replaces evidence with frightening speed. Quarantine becomes policy before it becomes comfort. Ships anchor at distance, waiting suspiciously offshore. Do you notice how patience grows thinner daily? Captains protest loudly, claiming healthy crews. Officials inspect reluctantly, aware of commercial pressure. Trade slows, while suspicion accelerates dangerously. Merchants lose money, and tempers rise accordingly. At that era, isolation is both shield and punishment. Dock workers wait idly, unpaid and restless. Food shipments spoil while negotiations continue endlessly. Some argue, better delay than burial. Others whisper, delay is another form of death. The river does not pause for human caution. Current flows steadily, indifferent to argument. Smugglers exploit confusion and limited oversight. Goods slip ashore without inspection or record. Protection becomes uneven, then porous. The city attempts control. Burial changes when deaths outpace ritual capacity. Coffins are constructed quickly, sometimes imperfectly sealed. Do you notice how ceremonies shorten noticeably? Clergy speak fewer words than usual. Families avoid prolonged gatherings despite grief. Graveyards fill faster than expected that season. Laborers dig deeper and faster each afternoon. At that time, mourning becomes practical necessity. Bodies cannot remain above ground safely. The wealthy secure private plots beyond crowded districts. The poor accept communal graves without protest. Memory becomes compressed into fewer gestures. A name is spoken once, then quietly stored. The street resumes motion almost immediately. Markets reopen because hunger continues relentlessly. Grief must compete with survival for attention. Some neighbors forget faces sooner than they admit. Summer ends, yet suspicion does not fully disappear. Survivors count themselves fortunate and cautious. Do you feel the quiet relief beneath conversations? It is not celebration. It is exhaustion. Shutters reopen and trade resumes visibly. Ships arrive again without whispered dread. Yet something has shifted permanently inside households. Families remember who left and who remained. At that era, memory becomes social currency. Those who fled are judged silently later. Those who stayed gain respect, though not compensation. Doctors defend their treatments with renewed confidence. Ministers interpret survival as divine intention. Merchants calculate losses and adjust ambitions. The river flows as it always has. The city pretends stability has returned completely. But trust has thinned slightly. And everyone knows another summer will arrive eventually, without asking permission first. Religion organizes fear when medicine cannot explain it. Churches fill when sickness spreads through streets. Do you notice how prayers change during fever season? They become specific, urgent, almost transactional. Candles burn longer in side chapels and corners. Saints are asked for protection without embarrassment. Processions move slowly through heat, faces rigid with strain. At that time, faith becomes public policy. Attendance signals obedience, and absence invites suspicion. Ministers warn against excess and hidden sin. Some believe restraint proves virtue under pressure, others believe obedience proves virtue more reliably. Doubt exists, but it learns to whisper. A man questioning doctrine risks isolation immediately. Isolation can be fatal in a crowded city, so people nod, kneel, and comply outwardly. Religion stabilizes behavior by giving suffering meaning. Catholic ritual shapes the city's rhythm and identity. Bells mark hours, but also mark belonging. Do you hear how bells separate neighborhoods subtly? Some districts respond, others remain quiet and distant. Processions pass through streets like moving authority. Crowds watch, then step aside respectfully. Incense mixes with humidity and river smell. At that era, ceremony competes with commerce daily. Merchants pause briefly, then return to bargaining. Dock workers remove hats, then resume hauling. The ritual does not stop work completely. It overlays work, like another layer of control. Children memorize gestures before they understand doctrine. They cross themselves automatically when elders watch. Confession functions as social correction, not only salvation. A man known to confess appears disciplined. A man who refuses appears dangerous. Protestant newcomers enter this Catholic city cautiously. They attend services reluctantly, or not at all. Do you notice how difference becomes visible quickly? Plain dress stands out against ornament and ritual. Speech patterns sound foreign even when English is spoken. Some keep to private meetings in rented rooms. Others attempt integration through business partnerships. At that time, tolerance exists, but tension remains. The city allows difference, yet watches it closely. Rumors attach easily to unfamiliar worship. They mock the saints. Someone whispers in a market. Nobody verifies the claim carefully. Suspicion does not require evidence here. Merchants still trade with anyone profitable. Clergy still warn against moral contamination. Social life becomes divided without formal walls. People learn which doors welcome them. They learn which streets feel safe. Identity becomes geography. Geography becomes invisible border. Language divides the city more quietly than religion. French persists in kitchens and courtyards. Spanish remains in records, decrees, and formal transactions. English grows through trade and American arrival. Do you understand what that creates daily? It creates confusion that can be exploited. A contract read in one language changes meaning later. A witness misunderstands a question during testimony. A clerk translates selectively, shaping outcomes. At that era, multilingualism is power unevenly distributed. The wealthy hire interpreters or learn quickly. The poor rely on neighbors and hearsay. Miscommunication becomes a weapon without visible violence. A shipment is delayed because words were disputed. A debt is denied because terms were unclear. People begin distrusting language itself. They watch tone more than vocabulary. They read faces more than papers. The city becomes skilled at suspicion. It must. Too much depends on understanding that rarely arrives cleanly. Rumor travels faster than any boat entering the river. A dockhand hears something and repeats it immediately. Do you notice how stories change within one street? Details shift, motives harden, names become sharper. A captain becomes a smuggler in one telling. A merchant becomes a thief in the next. Taverns amplify whispers into certainty. Kitchens refine them into warnings for children. At that time, information is a commodity without regulation. Newspapers exist, but delay makes them less powerful. The street provides faster updates than printed ink. Authority fears this speed more than violence. A rumor can empty a market in minutes. A rumor can ruin credit before sunrise. People learn to speak carefully, yet still speak constantly. Silence invites suspicion, so speech continues. The city runs on unfinished stories. Those stories gather meaning as they move, and once released, they cannot be recalled. Printing presses operate quietly, yet influence loudly. Ink stains fingers permanently and without apology. Do you see how paper carries authority instantly? A printed notice feels heavier than spoken words. Printers claim neutrality in their trade publicly. They insist, we only supply information. Few citizens fully believe that claim. Pamphlets pass through taverns and markets rapidly. Arguments begin before pages finish drying. At that time, literacy remains uneven across neighborhoods. Those who cannot read still listen carefully. Text is read aloud beside barrels and doorways. Meaning shifts with each different voice reading. Authority worries about ideas traveling unapproved. Merchants worry about accusations spreading unchecked. A single printed sheet can destabilize trust. Once ink sets into fiber, it endures. The press does not shout, yet consequences echo. Paper becomes power, and power unsettles established order. Smuggling exists because regulation feels uneven and selective. Ships anchor discreetly beyond formal inspection zones. Do you notice how certain crates avoid scrutiny? Officials sometimes look away deliberately. Fees are negotiated quietly without public acknowledgement. At that era, enforcement depends on relationships. A merchant with influence moves goods efficiently. A stranger faces delays and harsher examination. Contraband slips ashore beneath legitimate cargo. Tobacco, textiles, and rum change hands invisibly. Dock workers understand which shipments require silence. Silence is compensated, though never formally recorded. The river provides opportunity for those willing. Authority condemns smuggling publicly while tolerating profit privately. Hypocrisy becomes routine rather than scandalous. Citizens observe contradictions and adjust expectations accordingly. Trust erodes slowly when rules appear flexible. The city functions, yet fairness remains uncertain. And uncertainty breeds calculation more than loyalty. Fire threatens constantly in densely built districts. Wooden balconies lean close across narrow streets. Do you see how little space separates structures? A single spark can leap easily between roofs. Chimneys clog with soot and neglect. Kitchens operate with open flames daily. At that time, water is never far away, yet water cannot always reach flames quickly. Buckets pass from hand to hand urgently. Crowds gather, shouting orders without coordination. Wealthier homes invest in thicker walls and distance. Poorer quarters burn faster and more completely. After a blaze, rebuilding begins almost immediately. Insurance exists mostly through community assistance. Some accuse neighbors of deliberate ignition. Others suspect carelessness more than malice. Fire exposes inequality without speaking. Ash settles evenly, yet recovery does not. The city fears flame, yet depends on it. Hurricanes arrive without negotiation or gradual warning. Wind shifts first, then strengthens with violence. Do you notice how shutters slam simultaneously? The river rises, pressing against levees insistently. Families secure doors with rope and prayer. Merchants rush to protect goods from water. At that era, forecasts do not exist reliably. People rely on sky color and air pressure. Boats strain against moorings in darkening light. Rain erases streets into flowing channels quickly. Some buildings survive through luck and thickness. Others collapse with frightening suddenness. After the storm, silence feels unnatural. Debris clogs pathways and blocks trade temporarily. The wealthy count losses on paper. The poor count losses in shelter and tools. Recovery becomes collective effort and quiet competition. The city survives storms by adapting quickly. It has no alternative but resilience. Home life reflects the city's instability closely. Courtyards provide privacy that streets cannot offer. Do you notice how families cluster inward nightly? Doors close early when tension rises outside. Meals are simple, timed around work and heat. Children contribute before understanding obligation fully. At that time, authority inside homes is strict, fathers command, and obedience is expected. Mothers manage food, cloth, illness, and order. Privacy exists only in moments, not rights. Conversations carry through thin interior walls. Neighbors hear arguments and remember details later. Reputation begins within domestic space. Disorder suggests debt or moral weakness. Love expresses itself through provision rather than words. The household mirrors the port in miniature. It operates through hierarchy, surveillance, and necessity. Even comfort remains conditional in uncertain times. Women govern the interior world without public recognition. They manage fire, food, cloth, and sickness daily. Do you notice how their labor never truly ends? Morning begins before men return from docks. Water is carried, then rationed carefully for cooking. Laundry is scrubbed despite heat and insects. Children are fed, corrected, and kept useful. At that era, domestic work is treated as natural. Natural means unpaid, and unpaid means invisible. A woman's competence protects a household's reputation. Failure becomes gossip within hours. Neighbors watch who keeps clean steps and shutters. They watch who lets disorder show outwardly. Illness makes everything harder and more dangerous. A fevered child demands constant attention and fear. Women learn to endure quietly because complaint invites judgment. Their strength is assumed, not praised. Yet the city depends on their endurance. Without them, households collapse, and collapsed households draw dangerous notice. Children grow up quickly because survival requires usefulness. By 7, many carry water or sweep shops. Do you see how play exists only between tasks? Schooling exists, but unevenly and inconsistently. Reading is valued more than writing for most. Arithmetic is taught only where trade demands it. Apprenticeship contracts bind boys for years ahead. Masters promise food, shelter, instruction, and discipline. Discipline often means beatings without apology or debate. Girls learn within households through constant work. Cooking, spinning, mending, nursing become daily lessons. At that era, childhood is not protected time. It is training for endurance and obedience. Mortality shadows every family, especially infants. Parents invest cautiously, guarding attachment unconsciously. Loss is familiar, so joy is restrained. The city raises children to be useful before joyful. Survival comes first. Everything else follows if it can. Marriage is rarely romantic in this environment of risk. Families weigh outcomes with cold practicality. Do you notice how courtship happens under supervision? Meetings occur in public spaces with witnesses nearby. Letters are read aloud, not privately trusted. Dowries are discussed quietly, then openly when necessary. Women bring labor and lineage into negotiations. Men bring prospects, protection, and social standing. Love may follow, but it is optional. Once married, roles harden quickly and visibly. Women manage interior survival without pause. Men represent households beyond the door publicly. Failure becomes public knowledge within days. Separation is rare and dangerous for women. A husbandless woman struggles for safety and work. Marriage stabilizes the city by anchoring obligation. It binds debt, reputation, and property together tightly. Personal desire bends to necessity. Reputation governs daily life more than formal law. People remember who pays and who delays. Do you see how memory becomes a weapon? Shopkeepers note faces and posture carefully. Neighbors track behavior and church attendance closely. Absence is noticed, and explanations are demanded indirectly. Excess becomes whispered about, then exaggerated quickly. A single accusation can alter standing permanently. Drunkenness, violence, impropriety each carry heavy weight. Punishment often occurs without courts or police. Credit is denied, doors close, invitations stop. Shame disciplines more efficiently than force. Public notices reinforce this system regularly. Confessions, announcements, and warnings appear in print. The city prefers correction over chaos. Those who resist find themselves isolated. Few survive isolation in a port economy. Authority flows sideways as much as downward. Everyone participates by watching, repeating, and judging. Faith is not private in this city's structure. Bells dictate time and signal belonging. Do you notice how sermons shape behavior publicly? Churches serve as meeting halls and moral courts. Attendance signals membership in the community's protection. Absence invites suspicion and quiet speculation. Different congregations coexist, yet tension remains. Plain dress competes with ornament and ritual. Silence competes with procession and public prayer. Doctrine shapes posture, speech, and daily restraint. Some believe restraint proves virtue under hardship. Others believe obedience proves virtue more reliably. Children absorb these distinctions early and permanently. God is blamed for illness, fortune, and failure. Explanations turn upward when answers run out. Ministers warn against pride, excess, and idleness. Fear is a tool, but not the only one. Community pressure reinforces belief constantly. Doubt exists, but it whispers. Open defiance risks exile.